Hello, it's episode 10 of the CyberDudes podcast. I am Robin Thornton. He is Omar Sangarima. And go ahead.
Oh, hi.
I didn't know where I was going with the and anyway, so I kind of figured, do you know what? I'll just let you do your hi. How are you doing today, Omar?
Doing lovely. How about yourself, sir?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. It's a muggy day, but we'll survive. Before we get started, if you are not already subscribed to the YouTube channel or the Spotify, please do hit that little button. It really means an awful lot to us. I actually have a few, we've been doing this a little while now, and so I've got a few stats that we can pull out of the analytics of the YouTube and the Spotify. The Spotify is somewhat behind the YouTube a little bit. It's kind of difficult to get the traffic in there without things like YouTube Shorts and stuff like that kind of really acting as a funnel. But it's interesting the audience that we have got. I haven't actually shared this with you, so I think you'll like this. Spotify, like I said, it's fairly low on the traffic, but the people that we do have from the US, obviously, but from as far afield as Russia, which is funny because we are not particularly complimentary about that particular nation when it comes to cybersecurity matters, but also Poland and Kenya. Kenya is not what I would have thought. So
our Kenyan brethren, we appreciate the support.
We really do. Thank you, Kenya, and thank you, Poland. On the YouTube side of things, there's a little bit more of what I'd kind of expect actually. Again, lots of US because we are US based, UK because I'm presuming that's English for one, and then also some of my kind of network is still over there, you know, especially when you post onto your LinkedIn feed and the like. Canada, Australia, again hitting with that English language theme. Germany, Netherlands, India. India, the hotbed of IT activity. That doesn't surprise me at all. Sweden, Norway, South Africa, Denmark, Ireland, Switzerland, and the list goes on. So, you know what? Thank you very much for your patronage, I guess. It's really nice to see that we're hitting so many people from so far afield. And that's just actually the last 28 days. If I go for the last 90, let's see what else we get. It's all round about the same, really. New Zealand as well, Ukraine, which is interesting because that leads into the main feature of today's episode to a degree. So, give you a bit of a sneak peek on that one. We have a colleague of ours joined us in a recording that we made earlier. So you'll see some changes of daytime, nighttime behind me, some changes of clothes, although I think it is still a grey shirt. and a bit of a video change layout, or a layout change. But other than that, we've got our colleague Andy Kazishin. He's an incident responder who works with us at the place we work that we don't disclose for reasons of not wanting to put a target on our back. A very interesting conversation. He's been in the industry about 15 years or so, and didn't take a typical route into cybersecurity, but from what he said, he didn't plan on getting into it from the off. He sort of fell into it a little bit on the basis of, oh, here's what I like whilst I'm going through college, right?
It's great hearing his story, and I'm not going to spoil any of it because it's a great listen. But it's always engaging. He's great with our interns. He's great with any folks trying to break in. The patience that he exhibits for new people is really a sight to behold, and it goes to show you there's no one right way to get in.
For sure. Yeah. And he's a lovely bloke as well. Sometimes comes across to some people, I think, as maybe a little bit scary.
Those people earned
quite blunt, quite sarcastic at times.
Yeah,
but
those folks,
he's a top guy.
Those folks earn it, man. Right? Like if you play right by Andy, Andy's a prince, right? Like and it's funny though, he doesn't want anybody to know that. Right? It's almost like
that's true.
Yeah, but when you get down to it, he's really, like you said, he's a very lovely person.
Yeah, Anyway, right, what we'll do, as usual, we'll get into the news. The news. It's been, well, okay, so for the past week or so, been an interesting little menagerie of headlines. Our first several of them, we will not dwell on too long. I'm going to just rifle them off quickly because there's just a recurring theme with these. We have had Russian hackers exploit Safari and Chrome flaws in high-profile cyber attack. That's something that comes from the Hacker News. North Korean hackers launch new wave of NPM package attacks from Information Security Magazine, or Info Security Magazine, sorry. Vietnamese human rights group targeted multi-year cyber attack by APT32, Advanced Persistent Threat Group 32. Some of these names really mean not all that much to your common
say the
person.
other name. Say the other name for APT32 because it sounds so peaceful, but it's a terrible group.
The other name, which was
Ocean
the other name?
Lotus.
Ocean Lotus. Oh well, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, but this isn't this because of CrowdStrike's nomenclature, isn't it?
Sure.
And it's all to do with where the group is from. So I think we said this on a previous one. Like the Russians are bears, the Chinese are pandas. So it's still bears, just different kinds of bears. Bears that honestly, without humans, would not exist. Not
Pandas?
Suitable for the wild. Which, interestingly enough, actually comes out to NSFW. Panda NSFW is just not suitable for the wild.
I think you stumbled onto something there. We're gonna log that in and we'll use it down the road. I like it.
I could put a tag on that, and people would get some really people searching for weird shit would get some unexpected
Real disappointed.
results. Yeah, they'd be really disappointed.
It's a panda.
Just a Brit and an American talking about pandas rather than the strange things they were looking for.
Whatever weird stuff you're looking for when you're looking for NSFW panda. I don't know.
Gonna move on with that one. What else have we got? Notorious Iranian hackers have been targeting the space industry with a new backdoor, APT33. So just one up from the Ocean Lotus, was it?
Next door. Ocean Lotus.
From Reuters, we've got Iran-operated fake human resources firm to root out unfriendly spies. That's naughty. That's very Saudi Arabia levels of weeding out your dissidents. Yep. Bleeping Computer. US warns of Iranian hackers escalating influence operations. You're getting a theme here. We've got Iranians. Quite a lot. Iranian group TA453 launches phishing attacks with Blacksmith. Blacksmith, that's not going to mean an awful lot to people. It's basically just a code name for a malware toolkit, it would appear. Again, so insert number here, also known as Charming Kitten. So the Iranians, for some reason, are kittens. Cute and fluffy. That different nomenclature being the TA thing is what Proofpoint calls everything.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, we've got Meta exposes Iranian hacker group targeting global political figures on WhatsApp. So the theme here, fundamentally, it's all the APTs, is the Advanced Persistent Threat Groups, otherwise known as the state-sponsored guys who go screwing around in everybody else's business. They are well organized, they are well financed, they are well backed, but their existence is plausibly denied. It's a bit Mission Impossible. The director will disavow all knowledge of your actions. Just a general, and we bring this up simply because fuckery that you may see within discourse at the moment, within geopolitics, that you thinking what's going on there. There's an awful lot of large states who are not friendly with one another, screwing around in the background, all trying to just irritate each other, really, and sow discontent.
My main takeaway is that the enemy is organized, well-funded, and quite motivated. That overall, regardless of where the APT calls home, of who's their ally today and their target tomorrow, everyone spies on everyone else. And this is just another theater for that sort of activity.
Yeah, there's definitely no illusions about the fact that Five Eyes also does that as well. US, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand.
Thanks for the support, by the way. That's not lost on me. When you started naming those countries of people that
Yeah.
listen to the podcast. I was like, oh, the Five Eyes, cool. Thanks,
Well,
guys.
yeah, we haven't got the Five Eyes. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
point. Yeah, maybe we've got intelligence agency directors listening. I doubt it.
I know. Yeah, yeah.
Moving on, moving on. We're getting into voting season, right? And something here, piece from Krebs, our main man Brian Krebs on security, showing that multiple media reports this week have been warning Americans to be on guard against new phishing scams that arrive via text message. I found text message phishing to have really ramped up recently. These are messages saying that we have you in our records as not registered to vote. Check your registration status and register in 2 minutes at allvote.com/random tokeny thing, whatever it is. At the end, I've no doubt this probably catches out a few people because they're going to ask for sensitive information that you're going to expect to want to hand over if you need to register to vote.
I I think somebody could have crafted this a little bit better. And I thank my lucky stars that my initial drivers for project stuff, I put through your department, and you're able to say, hey, listen, let's change a little bit of the optics there, because this is absolutely somebody maybe on the engineering side or the let's bang it out and see how many folks we can get registered to vote, which is a great aim,
Mhm.
regardless of if you do vote, who you vote for. Please vote. That's my main takeaway there. But somebody should have put this through a couple more iterations with maybe awareness and training expertise, such as yourself, to maybe give it the sniff test before it went out. Because I wouldn't respond to this.
No, and that's the key thing because this actually wasn't a scam,
This is legit.
was it?
That's what's really sad. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing that's funny about here, because I mean, Krebs goes through, raising the red flags piece. So they looked at whether the domain was legitimate by visiting the URL and then looking into how long it has been around. It was only registered on July 10th, 2024. So that's number one red flag because it's a short-lived domain. That means that it's only really recently been set up. Going further through, you can check your voter status, or it says it on this thing. You can check your voter status at a site called votewin.org, which was registered on July 9th, 2024, right? And there's not an awful lot of information about who actually runs that website. So that's red flag number two, because it just goes to a generic contact page, which again is going to be asking for more information. And then that VoteWin is asking, like I said, it's asking for people to supply their name, their address, their email address, date of birth, phone number, all that sort of stuff that people, fishers are going to want. That's red flag number three. So yeah, but as it turns out, this was legit. Oh, this reminds me of a little while back. I think it was Sky, the satellite TV
Hmm.
broadcaster in the UK, sent out quite a broad message that really, really looked like phishing. There's a few of my colleagues back when I worked in the UK picked it up, and there was one guy who was particularly sort of sarcastic and cynical about things. He got it, and he just showed it to me. He just went, "What is this?" Yeah, you couldn't, if you wanted to try harder to get something that was legit but looked scammy, you kind of couldn't.
Just really needs, again, a couple of different eyes on there. I love the little bit at the end of the article where, hey, this wasn't malicious, but it was still incompetent. I think that
Mm,
was a nice round of cherry topper on the story itself. This really looked fugazi. I
yeah,
wouldn't click on it. Even the ones I've been
no,
getting recently look a little less scammy, and I still do the same thing. I go separately to where it purports to lead me and then try to check out the veracity that way.
yeah. Well, one of the key things here as well is that it's unsolicited. It's unsolicited. So, and
Sure.
that's typically one of your,
Big,
your first red
yes.
flags that goes along is like, hey,
Mhm.
I didn't ask for this. I don't know anything about it. Okay, moving on. We've got more text-based stuff. This time it actually is malicious. These text scams about fake bills for highway tolls apparently now have been moving into new states. So originally, I think there was South Carolina, there was New Jersey, I think maybe Washington, no, Oregon had a few of them as well. They appear now to be spreading across Illinois, Florida, North Carolina, and Washington State. millions of Americans sign up for their respective state electronic toll collection system, which texts you when you've got unpaid charges to cover. But scammers are now sending text messages pretending to be those state authorities in order to try and, at the very least, get some personal information out of you, if not $70-80 worth of funds under the guise of, oh, you missed your tolls and here's some penalties for you for your consideration. What do we make of this?
Am I a misanthrope for saying if I miss my tolls, who cares? You know, like send me some snail mail. I think in New York that's still one of the ways, and they'll say it right when you're crossing bridges. Right, we'll email you, we'll mail you, we'll do something a little bit, and there's a little bit more heft. Yes, you can get fished. Yes, of course. I guess if you want to go the real old school route, you can send snail mail and still send a scam. But this tech stuff, I know the ease of use and the convenience, and everyone's moving towards that. But listen, keep flagging me down. If I really owe it, I'll know it by you sending me 2 or 3 times, and then we'll talk about we'll talk about late fees and whatnot. But I'd rather that than, you know, obviously handing some scammer, you know, $70.
Yeah, definitely. I recall actually one of our vendors admitted to me a few weeks ago that she got caught out by one of these and forwarded it onto her husband, and her husband was the one who actually caught it, because I think she was just in a bit of a spin about it. But she being the cyber one, and clearly some of it had rubbed off to the husband, and he was the one who picked that up. But general advice being, if you do find yourself getting any texts regarding tolls, unpaid tolls, go to your respective state website, state toll management website, and look it up there.
They'll tell
use the text.
They will tell you.
You've got your text message app, you've got your email app, you've also got your web browser app, be it Chrome or Safari, right? Go use that, right? Don't just go using that link straight away that's in there. That's given to you for convenience, but really to get you into the scam. Okay, speaking of scams, there's been a surge in the pig butchering scams being those romance scams that draw people in under the guise of, you know, mending broken, lonely hearts. And then it quickly turns into a crypto scheme. Look how much money I've made from this. You can do it too. Lots of these things are run out of places like not quite the Far East, but the mid Far East subcontinent. It's Myanmar. It's China.
Laos.
China borders for Laos,
Cambodia.
Yeah, all around there. And there's good reasons for that, because actually it's Chinese gangs operating outside of the realms of Chinese jurisdiction, because the Chinese Communist Party are not keen on having the bad rep.
They do not play games. I gotta. No. It's not a lot of times where we gotta give them credit to that group, but here they're very strict on this stuff.
Yeah, but it appears that just over 40% of inflows into crypto wallets in the year to date have gone into wallets that have only been active in this year, which suggests that they're being set up, they're being used to move the money through and then move on and go to the next victims. The average number of days, though, that these scams are active is actually decreasing. So these scammers are going through a much quicker turnover cycle. They're going for lower amounts to try and in higher volume. Hypothesis is, in order to evade detection, the longer you keep one of these scams going, the longer it is that the more likely it is that you're going to be found out. Not least because authorities do let themselves be baited into these kinds of things under the guise of finding out where they're originating from. Speaking of pig butchering, something that we mentioned an episode or two ago, the bank exec who got pig butchered and transferred $47 million of his regional bank customers' deposits to scammers is now going to jail. He's getting 24 years for this.
Too short. Too short. Cut off his hands first and foremost, and then send him to jail. This is This is terrifying on a lot of levels. You need to believe in something, Robin, and one of those things is that your bankers are at
Screwing you.
least. Yeah, I need. Let's. I hearken back for the days of when banking was boring. I think it got us. It led us down a pretty bad, non-rosy path. But this is when you read this and you go, "Oh goodness!" It for me, it reminds me for some reason of like an episode of Fargo or just the movie
Mm.
itself, where some person in that area of the world just got caught up in some nefariousness, and the
And
fact that he did
everything they
it,
do is everything that they do is comically unfortunate.
unfortunate, and exactly right. And then but at the very least, and in this case, I would advocate for this. He should end up in a wood chipper, but only he ends up with 24 years in prison. Yeah, this is terrible on a lot of levels.
Yeah, so and we spoke about last episode, the amount of corporate governance breakdown that there has to be with this, or lack of just sheer lack of it in the first place. I mean, this is a regional bank in middle of Kansas, Heartland Tri-State Bank, and yeah, just
And
47 million
he
out of the
caused
window.
the bank to collapse. So like that's going to have ripples around that local economy.
Yeah,
In some of these areas, that's the pillar of economic activity,
I
right? You're
wonder
trying to
whether
be an
this
entrepreneur and all that. Like, come on.
presumably accounts up to a certain amount will be covered by FDIC. So actually, also the taxpayer is footing the bill for this.
So wood chipper still. I go back to my allusion to or an incinerator if we want to be.
Oh, I missed the Fargo link there. Yeah, that wood
Yeah.
chipper scene was wild.
Yeah.
Anyway, right, moving on, we have national public data. Yeah, so it turns out that 3 billion records, which we said last time was massively overblown and really overplayed in the media, turns out to be, now this is national public data saying it, so they've got a vested interest to play it down as much as they can, but it was only 1.3 million people allegedly affected. And the thing that we did miss out last episode was that the average age of the people involved in that breach, so to speak, was 70 years old, with 3 million or so records being of people who would have to be 120 years old by now.
Hey, blue zones, right? I don't know if Maine is in a blue zone, but it could be. A lot of older people there. It's sad that again this reinforces the fact that that cohort is going to completely keep being targeted. Why? Same reason you rob banks. That's where the money is. It's a
Mm,
concentration of wealth, and they're a little less tech savvy. That's the perfect storm to try to get one over on grandma and grandpa, which is horrific, but the reality.
good idea to look out for the grandparents when it's tech-based scams.
Period.
All right, keeping going. We're into a bit of a cyber hygiene and OBSEC theme on this next one. So a guy, I mean, this is actually quite clever. Windows Downdate tool lets you unpatch Windows systems. So a security reacher from an organization called SafeBreach, and Alon Leviev has released his Windows Downdate tool, which can be used for downgrade attacks that reintroduce old vulnerabilities in an up-to-date Windows 10, Windows 11, and Windows Server systems. Basically meaning that you can reintroduce by rolling back the operating system on these devices, you can reintroduce long fixed vulnerabilities that were eradicated when the software was updated to the later version. That's clever.
I'm, and this might be showing my rear end a little bit here. When a security researcher does cool attacks, I do find a thread and go, okay, this is why they're showing this. I tried reading this a couple times. I'm not seeing that here. Like I get that you can do it. It's cool. Also, the undetectability, I guess, maybe is the thing of
Yeah.
he wants to put it out there. Or they want to put it out there and have it. But I just it made me die inside because a lot of the things that you and I both preach on cyber hygiene is keep your stuff patched. Well, the hell good is that for if somebody can just go and unpatch it. I mean, maybe it speaks to another aspect of hygiene where visibility into your systems
Yeah.
is key, because if you start seeing stuff, hey, wait a second, we just all moved to Windows 11, and then you see a
Hmm.
raft of
Yeah.
10s show up, that could be something, but I don't know.
Well,
It's a neat attack though.
oh, it's really thinking outside the box. I wonder whether what he's done here is specifically to force Microsoft's hand, in the
Hmm.
sense that you release this down date tool that will allow people to roll back the operating system on people's devices specifically for the purpose of exploiting those long since fixed vulnerabilities that have now been reintroduced. Now that it's out there, now that it's in the open, it's not like Microsoft can go and just sweep it under the carpet and
Hmm.
go and Boeing him out of existence,
Whoa,
right?
that's, I mean, I didn't, I'm not wishing death on the guy. Like,
No,
let's,
no, but
please.
no, but
Oh,
here's what I mean. It's you put that out there, and now you say, not only Microsoft have exposed that there is a major flaw in the way that things work, and we already know that there's major flaws within Microsoft CrowdStrike, but
we're about to get Boeinged, it seems like, which is just cyber talk for Epstein. All right, like
Boeing,
let's be on the up and up here. Yeah.
like I said, the point being that you introduce this, you say, right, now this is a problem that is out there. Now you're going to have to fix it. Now you're either going to have to do it in a way that works around that. Well, the concept of down dating things now exists, right? Or is something that people will now think of as, oh yeah, okay, that's a good attack vector. So you're either going to have to do something in such a way, or Microsoft is going to have to do something in such a way where that it says down dating is going to be made significantly more difficult in general.
Okay.
Some sort of padlock on the OS that basically says, oh,
Hmm.
we can't do this, we can't do a rollback kind of thing. That is slightly problematic for when organizations do enterprise kind of upgrades, because if it doesn't work, then they have to be able to roll things back.
Yes, they do.
Or the flip side being, make it so that this cannot be done stealthily, because one of the problems of this downdating tool is that it can be done in such a way that your administrative monitoring tools and endpoint
Doesn't
detection
pick it up. Yeah.
doesn't pick it up, doesn't see it happening, which is that subterfuge that is probably the real problem. I think leaving in the ability to downdate, as it were, and roll back operating systems is valid. It's something that has a legitimate use case, but the fact that these systems wouldn't necessarily be able to see that has happened, that's
Mhm.
the major problem.
Gotcha. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Thank you.
Continuing on, we've got a guy from Missouri has extorted his New Jersey industrial sector employer by locking Windows admins out of 254 servers in an extortion plot. I think he wanted $750,000 for this. Yes, we wanted 20 Bitcoin, worth 750 grand, and he did it through automated means, resetting all of his admin colleagues' passwords and threatening to shut down and lock out these 254 servers. It's almost Scooby-Doo. So I would have gotten away with it were it not for you. Oh no, were it not for my lousy operational security. This guy was sprung by his web
Internet web
searches,
search
incriminating web
history.
searches, which apparently he'd hidden on a virtual machine, but he'd used one of his own accounts to access it, and he used a corporate laptop to do the search. I mean, just a bonehead move. Like, if you're going to do something like this, cover your tracks
I don't
properly.
understand how you bubble up the gumption. That's the nice way to say what I want to say, to do this sort of
The
attack.
balls.
Yeah, exactly. The nuts to say, you know what? I'm gonna scam them out of 3/4 of a mil, but then you still Keystone cop it, bumble it to the point where I love that it's and just the lines of, hey, how do I do this via command line? Just the searches. If you
Mm.
read, what some of the
Oh
searches were,
yeah.
straight up, it's like, how to get away with murder, basically. But in cyber. And I don't know, but there's a theme here I'm identifying. Kansas, Missouri. I don't know what's going on in the middle part of our great nation here. Calm down, guys. All right, we're all on the same team. what are you trying to do? But good Lord. Thankfully, it was Scooby-Doo levels of ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
This bonehead mistake of not covering one's tracks, which incidentally is actually the way that most hackers end up getting caught, which is why the really, really good guys are they're difficult to catch.
They're
They
gross.
are very, very skittish and no nonsense, because if you're a greenhorn kind of hacker and working with them, the moment that they get a whiff that you are not careful about what you
Cut you
do,
loose.
they'll cut you loose, and yeah, you'll be gone. So these guys are very, very cautious, or the guys who don't get caught are extremely cautious. This dude is getting 35 years in the slammer.
I mean, listen, I'm not advocating wood chipper levels. I'm not as indignant
Yeah,
over that type of thing, but I really do like hearing about double digit sentences for these types of crimes because that wasn't always the case, I feel, and I think that needs to be front and center as a deterrent.
I would just prefer that we recruit them for the state
Okay.
and say, look,
Hmm.
you're gonna do a Frank Abagnale on them. Say you're either
But
you're
this
either gonna
guy's dumb
work
though.
your
This guy's terrible. I don't want to recruit him for nothing. He couldn't cover his tracks, right? Like
No, okay,
I
that's
don't
true. Actually, yeah,
yeah.
he wasn't doing he wasn't doing much that good. But in the broader sense, like
I get that, yeah.
actually
Absolutely.
competent cyber criminals, the ones
Sure.
who are genuinely really good, Frank Abagnale them, catch me if you can. Like, say you're gonna serve out the rest of your sentence working for the federal government.
Little white collar,
Hmm.
kicking it to yeah, why not?
Yeah,
That would be
for
cool.
sure. Finishing out, we've got we're going quite long on the news here. I might have to snip a few bits out. Almost a third of global organizations suffered a breach of data in their software as a service applications last year as they struggled to gain visibility and control over their cloud environment, according to App Omni. So this is a third of organizations suffering software as a service data breaches. Oh my.
This is just goes to show you we still haven't figured out this shared responsibility thing. It's only been
Mhm.
around for 20 years, but it still confounds folks. Configurations still confound folks. Listen, I'm not, and I should not be, nor shall I ever be, anyone's yardstick for technical excellence. But I remember sitting up trying to play around in my own AWS environment and getting surprised by a $400 bill at the end of the month because I left the oven on, essentially, right? I left the EC2 running, I left some Route 53 going, and then I
Oh
was like, good
no.
grief, yeah. Um, should rookie moves, right? Thankfully this was a little bit back in the day. It's not like I did this yesterday, all right? I'll give myself that sort of grace, but
Do you have
I
to pay that, or did they
oh
zero
no,
it
for
out as
sure, no,
goodwill?
no, 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 absolutely. Oh, there's no such thing as goodwill in Jeff Bezos land. You stop that right now, but.
There are, if you ask nicely.
Well, maybe I'm just not as, I'm not as a little rougher around the edges than you are, Robin. I'll say that. I think it's apparent. But $400, and my point with that is it was a misconfiguration issue, or I couldn't parse exactly the steps that I needed to do. The documentation
Hmm.
is vast for all of these providers,
Mm.
but it's my contention that it's Byzantine on purpose.
Yeah.
In order to support the cottage industry of expertise needed in order to then get these things right. These are hard, these are not out of the box things. I don't think we've figured out, we just don't have the years that we do for any on-prem solutioning. And by God, you and I know that even on-prem stuff gets botched hygiene wise, basics wise, all the time. So,
Mm.
if on-prem it can be a shit show sometimes, which we know it can be. This newfangled, and not really new, but sort of newfangled comparatively, setup is also going to suffer from the same sort of situations. I think there's the added, which why I said about shared responsibility. There's the added component of one of these, right? Who's really on deck for locking down XYZ piece of this?
Spider-Man.
Exactly, and that so I think that compounds it, and I think I'll be crazy. I think this number's low. I think there's more, but people just don't cop
Probably.
to it. I
Yeah.
really, I
Well,
really think so.
Well, the stats that come out of this, so there's apparently a lack of awareness about cybersecurity posture. 72% of respondents claimed their organization has the most mature software as a service cybersecurity program rating, unchanged from the previous year.
That's
That is
always a lie.
classic. That is
Yeah,
classic. The people whose shit is bad say that it's top notch,
it's
and
Dunning-Kruger.
yeah, exactly. And then the people who say like their database of all of their assets, the people who say that their database is crap, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah,
The ones who say, oh, our data's perfect, are the ones you've got to watch out for.
mad sus.
Yeah.
Never.
Lack of cybersecurity accountability. 50% of respondents claimed responsibility for securing software as a service is down to the business owner, with just 15% saying it's centralized in the cybersecurity team. This is what really pisses me off, actually. I do not like that with just 15% saying it's centralized in the cyber team, because dependent on the size of your organization, that's even giving that responsibility to the cyber team is not feasible. They
It'd be
cannot
criminal.
know
Yeah.
all the workings of every single piece of software that you have.
Setting them up. You're setting them up to fail, and they're not going to know the unique use cases that you're utilizing SaaS for, right? That's why
Yep.
it needs to be a partnership. Trust me, I will say this for small businesses, big businesses, small to medium businesses. Your cyber team, whatever it is, wants to partner with business owners and technical owners on the
Yeah.
on the implementation side. They want to get to know y'all, but the business side of the house needs to say, "Hey, this is something that we need help on, and we'd like to do it correctly." It needs to kind of go both ways.
Sure. Here's something we're going to wrap up on these last two. A lack of visibility into SaaS. 49% of respondents who frequently use Microsoft 365 claim they have less than 10 applications connected to the platform. In reality, AppOmni's aggregated data indicated that there's more than 1,000 connections on average. Doesn't
Listen,
surprise me in the
no,
slightest.
not at
And
all.
then a tale as old as time, poor policy enforcement. Although 90% of respondents said policies are in place to ensure only sanctioned apps are used, a third admitted these rules aren't strictly enforced. I wouldn't even say strictly enforced; they're just not enforced at all.
And really quickly, that's a recursive thing to one of the first 2 points that you said, because it's through lack of visibility. How are you
Yeah,
going to
exactly.
enforce policies on things that you don't know exist?
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Well, here's a nice little segue here, because this goes to oftentimes a lot of the lack of visibility is within the senior management. This from Dark Reading: C-suite involvement in cybersecurity is little more than lip service. I know you've got opinions on this one.
It's they run deep, and it's one of those. I think the state of the industry for cyber is finally have a seat at the table. That's been the litany for years. Now, what are we
Yep.
going to do with it? Right? You can be at the table, but if you're the weird smelly kid at the table, you're getting about as much done as if you were in the other room. Right? They let you in, but they put you in a corner and said, "Shut up and don't touch nothing."
Yep.
It really needs to be a partnership. Now, this is not me just beating the head over anybody who's not named a CISO on the executive suite. Not at all. I think
Hmm.
CISOs and the industry as a whole needs to start thinking and bridging that gap, thinking more of how can I support the business goals of the organization that I'm in charge of protecting. And I think if you start speaking that language, then they're not just going to tolerate you sitting at the table. Then you suddenly become a partner that can offer them competitive advantage. The best CISOs I've seen can do both.
Yeah.
They do both very well, and they sit there and go, "How can I empower you? How can I enable you?" However, sadly, most of the time, we hear those terrible stories, whether they're merited or not, of a CISO being hung out to dry and being
Yep.
offered as the ritual sacrifice to the SEC because the rest of the C-suite couldn't get their heads out of their asses.
Yeah. This is. I mean, yeah, I completely agree with you. It should be CISO should be reporting, I think, directly into the CEO.
Right.
In
Yeah.
scenario, and the CEO should have a good pulse on what's going on from a security and risk perspective. And if not that direct kind of reporting line, then the CISO should be a direct report of the risk officer. I actually don't think it should exist there as an IT
How do
function. But
you how do you police stuff impartially if you're
yeah.
part of that chain? It's a very difficult
Yeah.
dance to do. It's not impossible, but it starts off on the back foot.
So here's a bit of a hot take on this one. From the C-suite perspective, if all you're going to do, or if what you want to do is pay lip service, then at least please just do these few things. Ask your security function, what do you need and how can I help you? How much is it going to cost, and do your best effort to satisfy that cost. And then frankly, piss off and leave them alone and let them do their job. Let them do their work. If you don't want to engage with them in a way that is meaningful, then just do those things. Give them the tools they
And
need and let them do what they do, and give them the authority to do it as well.
bingo. And I think CISOs, in order to engender now that you're in the room, now that you have a seat at the table, if you're able to tie the things you're trying to do back to driving business value, you're going to find a heck of a lot easier time in getting things done. So while I absolutely agree that if you're going to pay lip service from the rest of the C-suite, what the CISOs can do is welcome that scrutiny, welcome and be as transparent as possible going, we're not just doing technology or cyber for cyber's sake. We're not all mad scientists here that just, want to wear hoodies professionally for a living. We're trying to do XYZ that's going to do ABC to drive the goals of the business forward. And being able to present that sort of narrative, I think, is going to supercharge and finally get those CISOs from just being allowed in to being welcomed, to being sought out in the C-suite.
Yep. Penultimate one, McDonald's Instagram page is hacked in $700,000 fake crypto scheme. I think this is one that, to me, this is one that shows if you're a small business owner and your marketing and brand awareness primarily relies on social media, if McDonald's can get honed essentially by this kind of thing, if McDonald's can get tripped up and have their Instagram account hacked, then you definitely can. You're probably not as visible as a target, but you don't need to be. The key, I would say, one of the key ones here is every business, no matter the size, needs to make sure that they have their social media access locked down.
My key takeaway is Wendy's would never. All right, their social media team is amazing. They were the ones that started the snarky nonsense a little bit pre-COVID. I love the absolutely blistering takes that some of those social media folks came up with. But back to the story, you are such a big brand, so you're going to be a target. That just goes without saying. But what I love here, and the analysis that the hot fire you're spitting out here, Robin, is all sorts of accounts can be propped up as fronts for scams. And if you have really terrible defenses set up or no defenses at all, who do you think becomes the easier target? Somebody like McDonald's, who I know I have some folks in my network that are on the cyber team for McDonald's corporate. They're pretty damn good, right? Surprisingly for me, until I stumbled onto these awesome professionals, that and like Kroger, those two brands, amazing cyber, right? And that's just my little corner of the internet. So if these folks can get got, y'all can as well. So just basic hygiene, right, can go a long way here.
Yeah. And I think that's an aspect there that you latched onto in terms of the value of these accounts, because I don't think a lot of people really see the value of these accounts. I've seen smaller business. I think one of them was like a physiotherapist service that got in touch with me asking for me to do some sort of survey or something like that, and it turned out that it was just a hijacked account of theirs, but it was several thousand, if not tens of thousands of followers, enough of a following to rope people in. If you work on a 1% success rate with that, you're getting 100 nibbles potentially off 10,000 followers, yet that account is in no way near big enough to attract any widespread attention of, oh look, this thing's been hacked, because at the end, this account's been compromised, because at the end of the day, they're 10 to the dozen of that size anyway. You're also not big enough for Meta to give the slightest shit about helping get your account back. For McDonald's, they will help them because it's big corporate things with lawyers and stuff, and they can prove that, they can prove their access to the system. If you are relative, and I don't mean this in a nasty pejorative way, but if you are relative no name sole proprietor or something like that, you ain't getting that much cooperation from Meta. Your account's gone, and so is your following, and you're gonna have to rebuild that, and that's hard. And I know
And
that because building the Super Simple Cyber page has been hard. Which, speaking of which, if you're not following Super Simple Cyber on Instagram, it's cyber.supersimplecyber.
But also on top of that, nice plug. I love the segue. But just
we do need to do more plugs.
Final, we do. But as a final aside, there also, what could your social media accounts be connected to? What do you have the same sort of passwords for your social as you do for some of your corporate banking? I would probably bet that you might, or that it's some derivation thereof. So this all just goes back to show that you're thinking that you're too small of a target to be a target is not a defense.
Nah, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Indeed.
All right, cool. Final one. Yeah, I think we had a bit of a lag in the recording.
We did. You
Final
kind of
one.
cut out a bit, yeah.
Yeah, well, you did too.
You did.
No, you did. Ukraine cyber range in a Kiev hangar. In a Kiev hangar, Ukraine launches cyber range for everyone. I don't want to go too deep into this because it's mostly a segue story. But this comes from Recorded Future. Fundamentally, this is a program that is being started for Ukraine to push back against the big Russian cyber monster that they have. They've got various different levels. It's a platform that's been developed. They've got various different levels of difficulty that goes for it. It is a program that Ukrainians need to apply for, but if they get chosen, then they get pulled into that and essentially helping the Ukrainian state bolster its cyber capabilities. Everyone from university graduates up through to seasoned cyber experts. It's a nice thing. It's a good thing. I like it.
My biggest takeaway here was the broad range of citizenry that this program is open to. It obviously has its focus on cyber operators in the here and now, but I think sadly it's just one of the realities. Ukraine has to get with the program in terms of this is going to be a forever war on the cyber front at the very least. Hopefully not in any other front. Please let's figure that shit out. But on the cyber side, it's going to be a forever thing. So you might as well educate the hell out of your citizenry if and whenever you can.
Definitely. And that's a neat little segue into our feature for this episode. So we're going to flip over to a previously done recording and we'll meet you back here for